All right. So, like I said, my name is Dr. Melissa Batt. I'm a child psychiatrist. I also have a background in infant mental health. And so we're going to be doing a short little poll if you'd like. If you have no opinion on what I talk about today, I'm just going to start on what I have prepared, and then we'll just go from there. This will be recorded, so you can watch it later on our website. And yeah, I've listed some helpful resources just in case anyone needs them for later on. Just because that hasn't been listed anywhere else yet. I'll give the poll just a couple more a couple more seconds. So if you'd like to finish up, or if no one has an opinion, we can just move on. And please feel free to send me a chat if there's something specific that you'd like to talk about, or have any questions, or if there's anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to hear about. I'm happy to do that as well. Okay, so doesn't sound like anybody has a strong opinion about what we talk about, which is great. So basically, so like I said, here's some helpful resources if needed. You know, this is a high stress time because everyone's stuck at home and with their kids and their families and their partners. And so I wanted to put up there a list of a couple phone numbers for hotlines. So these are staffed phone numbers. They're not warm lines where you leave a message and someone calls you back. This is somebody picks up the phone and you can either call. There's one where you can even text to get someone to text you back. So those are some nice resources for later that you can kind of tuck in your pocket and have for later on. Okay, so let me see here. All right. Let me see if I can't figure this out. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to keep going about how to help kids cope while sheltering in place. So this kind of dovetails off of what Dr. Cypers and Dr. Lopez sort of already talked about earlier in their talks. But specifically, I'm going to be focusing on little kids, so kids that are 5 or younger. Now that's, you know, a wide range of developmental. You know, that's a huge developmental scope. Babies all the way up to age 5 or 6 is a huge range. And so I'm just going to be talking a little bit more broadly about that, but also, you know, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. So the first thing about helping kids cope is sticking to a regular routine and schedule. And I think that's already been covered. But, you know, I think it's probably one of those things that is undervalued in terms of little kids. You know, even little kids who seem to not necessarily want a whole lot of structure, they still do really well with routine and regular things, you know, like getting up, getting dressed, brushing their teeth, eating breakfast, those kinds of things that they can rely upon in this time when a lot of things are really different right now. So that is something that's really important. And it also feels reassuring. And I think that's the huge thing, is that, you know, we're not just able to reassure kids with our words, but also with just the things that we're doing and modeling. And I think that's going to be the most powerful thing for kids at this age is, you know, they're watching what we're doing and what we're saying, and sort of taking their cues from that. So the fact that, you know, we can still kind of maintain some semblance of routine is going to be important. And predictable. Okay. It's important to give choices when there are choices. Now, obviously, you are limited a lot by what you can do. So, you know, there's you can't, say like, yeah, we're going to go outside, we're going to talk to people. Obviously that's not a choice right now. But maybe you can pick a game. Maybe they can pick a game to play. They can pick what they have for breakfast from 2 choices. Obviously there aren't a huge array of things that they can do right now. Maybe they can pick what they're going to watch on YouTube or, whatever. So there are choices to be had, and it's especially great if those things are things that you don't, like the key to giving choices to little kids is giving them choices for 2 things that you don't mind. the 2 preferable things, like, my favorite thing is like, do you want to take a bath or go to bed? Like, if that's either way you win, then at least that's giving them a choice. So that's one kind of way to give little kids a way to control their environment. The next thing is to check in with your own emotions. So I find this really important, and I think Dr. Cypers probably touched on this a little bit, but again, little kids are watching us and they're taking their cues from us. So you really want to make sure that you are trying to stay as calm as possible in front of them. You might be really anxious and nervous during this time. And of course they're going to pick that up, even if you don't say anything out loud. But, trying to maintain this calm exterior while still, kind of checking in with your own emotions, saying, you know what, I'm a little bit worried too, but we're going to be okay because we're safe and we're doing all the right things and we're staying home right now. When little kids, actually any child of any age has any emotions, you can validate that and name it. So, if your young child has disappointment or worry, you can sort of say like, hey, you look a little worried right now, and that's okay. Do you want to, like, let's talk about that. Or you can bring it back to yourself and say, I'm feeling worried too, and here's what I'm worried about. With little kids, it's harder to do that because what they're feeling may not be very apparent. Like if they're having a tantrum, that's usually how big emotions come out. But when kids do that, it might be nice to kind of make suggestions about like, hey, are you feeling upset? Are you feeling worried? Are you feeling mad? What, kind of giving some suggestions. Maybe you might hit on it. Or, if that's happening, you can say, well, I'm feeling worried and here's what I'm feeling. Not to, you don't have to go into a great amount of detail. Obviously we don't want to worry them too, but that can also feel a little validating to know that if they're feeling something, you're also feeling that feeling. Keeping in touch with family and friends is important. FaceTiming, even for kids younger than 2, the American Academy of Pediatrics is okay with that amount of screen time with little kids if it's having to do with social connections and FaceTime or Skype or something like that. Obviously like all day, but to a limited amount, like that's still fine. And I think that helps them. There's some data to show that they get value out of that. So the next thing would be to find a way to modify the missed activities. So let's say they're not able to go to gymnastics right now. They're not able to go to soccer right now. They're not able to do some of the things that they might do when some of these other activities are virtual. Like dance class might be virtual, but soccer isn't. And maybe there's a way you can kick around a ball, in your basement instead, or go out in the front yard and try some of those activities. So maybe they won't have the birthday party they wanted, but maybe you guys can do something special at home. It's really important, and I think I touch on this later, but I'll mention it here too. It's important not to promise things that you can't deliver. Besides, we don't know how long we're going to be sheltering in place. So saying like, you know what, this is all going to be over, I'm sure next week or next month, or even that might be unrealistic. So to say all these promises of these big overblown things that, just to try to get over the hump will eventually backfire because that's going to come up and it will be next month very soon. And so you want to be realistic with what you're able to promise. And it doesn't have to be something big. I mean, kids this age don't need the huge thing to like feel better. If it's something small, at least that's something they can look forward to. Okay. if questions do come up, and I will talk more about this next time, so I have a lot of slides about talking to little kids, and specifically kind of languages and terms to use. But, you know, and obviously that's different at different ages. If you're talking to your 2-year-old, it's going to look a whole lot different than talking to your 6-year-old. But if they do have questions, and they will come up, you want to answer honestly, probably very briefly, and using words and terms that they understand, with the full expectation that the questions might come up again. It might be the exact same question, and what they're looking for again is that reassurance. And if the answers are the same, then that can be really reassuring to your toddler or preschooler. Again, kids are watching us, so taking a positive outlook. This is true all the time, not just in a time of pandemic, but you know, saying positive things, looking at the bright side. That is really tough in this time right now. But, you know, looking at the things that are actually really great about everyone being at home, everyone being together. We're all together as a family. We're home all the time. You know, saying some of those things, because I think if you were to record yourself while you were walking around your house, you'd be surprised at how many things that are negative that come out, you know, like, gosh, I just want to get outside, or, I just wish like the store had what I need to make dinner tonight, or whatever, whatever it is. I'm going stir crazy. I need to get out of the house. They're going to pick up on those things. So if you're trying to model, you know what's so great is that we are all together. Or you know what I really feel lucky about is that we all got haircuts right before this started, or whatever it is. I mean, like, even though that seems minor, like that's a big deal to me. And some of those things really, help set your child up at this young age for a positive outlook on life later on. And that we have data to prove that that's true, that people who have more positive outlook, your kids are going to be that way and be more resilient later on. Protecting kids from scary images. So there's a lot of news on right now. If you're the kind of family that has TV on in the background, please be very careful with that. There are scary images and things that are confusing to little kids going on right now. They're going to hear a lot of alarming language. In general, I like to recommend not having the news on if that's something you're watching in the background. I have a lot of parents that say, well, it's the news, it's, objective, it's something that I really like hearing about, like the weather comes on, whatever it is. But for little kids, it's really not geared, the news is not really geared towards little kids. I don't believe when they're putting together content for that kind of media that they're really thinking about, like, oh, I bet a 2-year-old is listening right now. So you just have to be really careful, because nowadays especially, there are a lot of disturbing images that pop up on the screen if you're watching TV, or if you're watching it online, or if you're watching a clip or something like that. You just have to be very careful about what they're watching, because they are watching. Encouraging kids to choose something. Again, having the option of a choice is very helpful, and it really does help them take control over what's going on right now. So even if they're little, they can still choose, what game are you going to play? What book do you want to read? What craft are you going to do? Those kinds of things. Like, when there is a choice, to be able to give them a choice, that's really helpful for that age group, and just helps them kind of take some control, just like everybody seeks out that kind of control in their lives. So do little kids. Staying physically active. I don't feel like I need to go into much detail about that one. Obviously that's hard if you feel like you are in too urban of a setting and you can't, really go out in a green space or anything like that right now. Like playing on the playground is just probably not a great idea because there are other kids that might have touched the equipment. So if there isn't like an open field available where other families aren't also, that you can't maintain a social distance, trying to do something in your house as best as you can, trying to make it fun. I know that's really challenging right now, but just trying to incorporate that into daily life. Again, another thing about choice is letting kids participate in what you're going to make for dinner, breakfast, or lunch, or snack, helping them, them helping prepare it. So little kids, even at very young ages, are actually really good at helping. that is, you know, really surprising to some families, but they are really, really great at, you know, cutting things, or, you know, maybe at the 5 or 6-year-old level. 2-year-olds not so much, but maybe they can help pour or measure or something like that. And then be flexible and patient. Now that's always very hard because, um, you know, it's not always the best time to try to be flexible or patient. But this is another way to model sort of behavior that you're wanting out of your child. If your kid is having a lot of tantrums or having a lot of upset feelings, it might be a good time to kind of be self-reflective and be like, what am I doing right now? You know, if like I'm just like nitpicking everything they're doing, or if I'm, you know, just really like tense and it's obvious, maybe sort of checking in with yourself, doing some of the self-care things that you need to do to kind of then help your kids, because that's, you're a big influence on your kids' emotions. This is less applicable for little kids, but trying to give them a little space. And I don't mean time out. I mean, like, you know, maybe they're in a room and you're still watching them, but maybe you don't have to be like sitting on the ground with them doing everything all the time. I don't even think that's feasible. A lot of us are trying to work at the same time. Maybe you're trying to, you know, co-parent, and that's really challenging. So maybe they are necessarily getting some downtime right now. You know, media doesn't necessarily provide little kids downtime necessarily. I think that's a myth, you know, like, oh, well, they're going to watch cartoons because I think they need a little bit of a break. TV isn't really a mental break, really for any age, but especially for little kids. There's still a lot of stimulation. There's a lot of things going on. So that may not always be downtime. Allow kids to be bored. You know, that's when their creativity kind of kicks in. Kids need to be bored. Now, I know some of your older kids are probably like, you know, bothering you, like, I don't know what to do. I'm so bored. And I totally get that. But little kids, if you give them the space, can create something to do out of very little. They're kind of remarkable. So, you know, I like to tell my kids that boredom is not a terminal illness. Like you know, if I let you be bored, you'll figure it out eventually. You know, we have enough stuff and enough, you know, you have to give them some materials, of course, but they will occupy themselves pretty well if given the opportunity. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but letting little things go. So if possible, let the little things go, because, you know, we're all kind of stressed. You kind of, you know, take a moment to sort of take a deep breath yourself, or just kind of pause, and that's okay. And then trying to make future plans. Again, something I sort of already touched on already, but you know, they don't have to be grand plans, but if you're, you know, if your kids are feeling cooped up and they're like, I just wish we could go somewhere, I just wish we could do something, you know, telling them, yeah, well, why don't we plan something? Why don't we you know, something to look forward to, something that's realistic, something that you know that you can deliver on. So like if it's a trip, like just make sure that's something you can realistically do. And then maybe that would even be beneficial for your mental health to kind of be like, let's plan something fun. Let's plan a, you know, a beach trip. Maybe that's next year, but just to be safe. But, you know, like that, that may benefit everybody. Okay. Let me see here. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Next time we'll talk about talking to young kids about COVID-19. So something to look forward to. I hope everybody enjoyed this presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Or if you have any comments about what you'd like to hear about in the future, I am more than happy to hear about that. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.